Hello, we're going to look at river reading today. It's an essential skill. It allows you to be safe and confident and able to predict what will happen on the river. There are various ways to view the river, and we'll look at those. It allows us to avoid problems and hazards. It also allows us to find various routes through complex rapids. So we'll look at these images here. For example, this one, the water is flowing in this direction. We can see the downward V. We can see a wave here and then some secondary waves. We can see that it's flushing out and flowing in that direction. And it looks like there's going to be a shallow rock under there. Enough probably to paddle over, but a safer route might be this way. But then there's something there. So this is the paddle. Looking up the river, so the water's flowing down this way. We're seeing some waves, some rocks, something over here, and we're seeing that the main flow is down here. Some wave here because of this upstream rock. There's a rock being poured over there, and we're seeing a kind of diagonal change in fast and slow water over there. A large eddy here. So you can notice a lot when looking from the bank. However, it's also very hard to remember and looks very different when you're in the boat. Okay, so here we're going to look at the principles of moving water. In a natural river, there are many irregular features, and that causes the water to be turbulent. Rocks under the surface can cause this. Rocks above the surface can also cause turbulence. Irregular banks and bends in the river and so on divert the main flow. There can be quite a variety of flow regimes across the width of a river. So just looking at some here, we have a rock ledge here. Water's pouring over in this direction and flowing out over here. So if you look more closely, you can see that there's white water, then there's darker water, which is flowing less fast. There's some circulation here, and as the water pours over, it circulates. You maybe see more clearly here where there's a rock with water pouring it over it in this direction. So beyond the rock, downstream of the rock, we have an eddy, just here. And we also have some eddy line, which is a bit of turbulence. That kind of the water has flowed around that rock on both sides. So there's white water both sides. And this is what you call an upstream V, which we'll come on to. And there's an eddy here. So if maybe you won't see the rock, but if you see these two shapes of white water, you can understand that upstream of that there is a rock. And again, over here, you can tell where the rocks are, even though you can't see them. There's some rocks here, water's flowing in that direction. There's a rock going through the surface. There's an eddy behind that rock that's larger. There's a secondary rock there. And there's some shallow rocks in here. Okay, so here we're going to look at some river features. We'll look at the downstream V, telling you where the main current is. We'll look at upstream V's, which are an indication of where a rock is. We'll look at eddies, which are slower moving water circulating in the opposite direction to the main flow, off to the sides usually, or behind the obstruction. We'll look at holes and stoppers, which can be hazards. And we'll look at waves. And a general term that we'll be using is river left and river right. This is reference to as you look downstream. We talk about the right bank as being on your right, looking downstream. Okay, if we're looking over here, we've got a rapid flowing this way from down to here, and this is an eddy at the bottom of the rapid, and that might be a good place to recover boats to after coming through the rapid. Here we're seeing a natural ledge of rock. Water is flowing from the bridge down this way, and we're seeing some circulation as the water pours over that small drop, and that can be what we call retentive. It can hold you there. If you're coming down your boat, you're flowing with the current here, but at this point, this current is going in the opposite direction and tends to stop you. And if you get sideways in something like that, then it can hold. And just here, we're looking down the rapid, and we're seeing a pulsing wave over a submerged rock there. Various other features. We'll look at these in more detail later. Okay, so we'll talk about upstream and downstream V's and their significance. So when the main flow is constricted at both sides, you will get a V. So you can see that here. The river is flowing in this direction. There's a constriction of shallowness over here, and there's some rocks coming off this bank. So you're getting a V-shape pattern. Can be seen more clearly from above, but the V's are pointing downstream. So the main channel is through the middle of those V's. If we look over here, you can maybe see it more easily. Here's a downstream V. And in fact, that is the same section of water looked at from two different angles. So it's a clear indication of the main flow. So the main flow is down the middle of these V's, straight on through. A rock in the river can split the flow and is seen as an upstream V. So we can see an example here. Again, the current is going that way. This rock over here is disturbing the current, and you're seeing a white V pointing upstream, whereas the dark water V pointing downstream is where you want to go. So a rock is causing that V there, and the main flow is causing that V there, which extends on down there. So now we're talking about eddies. Some images here to show examples. So they're caused by the main flow passing over an obstacle, causing turbulence, and resulting in different speeds of water flow, sometimes different directions. So it's slow circulating water. We'll see that in the pictures. And the eddy line is the boundary between the fast and the slow. So if we look at the images now, you've got an eddy up here. There's actually a kayaker in that eddy. So the main flow is coming down, and it's hitting this rock. And here's a very obvious eddy behind the rock, which this canoe is actually sitting in. So the fast water is coming down this side of the rock, and also that side of the rock. But because of the way turbulence works, you've got slow water and a sheltered point immediately behind the rock. And the stronger the current, the more this is obvious. So here you've got some rocky ledges and water is pouring over. There's some white water, but there is an eddy over here against this bank. Looking here, the main flow is obviously the white water here. So there's an eddy on this side because the formation under the riverbed is putting the current to the other side. There's a small eddy behind that rock. That's the same one actually that we looked at here. And then right over at the bank, so over here, you can see there's a small eddy there. So there's low current, faster current, lower current, faster current, lower current. So we'll look at the terms now, holes and stoppers. So a hole might be an example here where the water is flowing this way, and there's a rock or something here, a shallowness here. As the flow goes over it, it pours down into what we term a hole and then tends to circulate. Imagine a wave, so that the water here is moving in the opposite direction than the flow. There's another example over here. So if you come down your boat, you're going at the speed of the water, then you hit this, it will tend to slow you up or stop you. Also in this white area here, white water, it's white because it's got lots of air. You can float in water, you can't float in air, but also you can't breathe in water. So what happens in here potentially, and why it's dangerous, is you cannot float because there's so much air that your buoyancy is reduced, and then you can't float, or it takes a lot of effort to keep yourself above the surface. You might be tumbled around by the circulation of the current if it were bigger. And of course you can't breathe because you're effectively in a water foam, and you can't breathe. So it's potentially a dangerous thing, and we certainly beginners would avoid them. With experience, you can judge how much water is flowing out of the stoppers, or if it's all circulating. So there's a lot of water going in, but how much is coming out is one way to judge the thing. But that comes with experience. As a beginner, you would avoid situations like this, which is usually easily done if you can read the river. So a stopper is another thing, which again, you've got the water flowing from this bridge, dropping over a rock ledge, um, similar to a weir. This is a natural ledge, but a weir has a similar thing. And you have this circulation happening here. And again, that is white water, so less buoyant, and with the circulation, a tendency to hold you in place. So potentially dangerous, best avoided. So here we're going to look at waves, natural waves forming in a river due to the random way the rocks are distributed in a river. So obstacles in the flow can make waves, usually rocks. And they're generally stationary because the flow is going over the fixed obstacle. They can pulse because of turbulence in the water. The conditions can change over a period of seconds usually. And they can be reactionary. In other words, a wave may be coming bounced off some feature like the bank or a rock and causing reacting to the obstruction, and that can come at a strange angle. So if we look at the videos here, the water is flowing down this way, and you can see various waves. Clearer here, looking downstream, the water is obviously going that way, so entering here, flowing down. And there are waves at different heights. These waves will be bouncing off those, they'll bounce off these side walls and come at you from quite a strange angle, not in line with the straight across the river, but they form a V formation typically, and sometimes you have to account for the fact that they're at that angle. So over in this video, you're looking at smaller waves, and those are less of a problem, but again, with water levels, that can change quite considerably. So the same section of water can look quite different. So that's the entrance to a rapid here, and the water is coming towards us, and now we're looking back up the rapid from the bottom. So those are fairly gentle waves, but they can vary and become much bigger. So it's always useful to be able to find where the main flow is. So the reason for that is it's often the most obvious and easiest route, particularly as you're coming down and viewing the river from the boat. Here we're looking from the bank, and you can see that the water is flowing in this direction as shown by the arrows. That's the main flow. There's some rocks here which are causing a bit of a drop, and you're having a quiet bit of water here shown here. That's an eddy, and there's actually another eddy over here. So the main water is going down the middle of the river in this case. It's closer to the far bank because we're halfway around a bend here, and that bend, this is the outside of the bend over where these rocks are, and it's typical to find a cliff or buff on the outside of the bend and a shingle beach as seen here on the inside of the bend. So in this case, as normally the water is going around the outside of the bend, but the bank itself is irregular. There's some rocks up here, so you get these eddies. So as I said, usually on the outside of the bend, the main flow. It's usually the deepest channel because the current will actually cause erosion and move any rocks and so on. And because the main flow is there most of the time, hazards are likely to be washed away, and so you're likely to have the simplest route. So looking at hazards, very obvious one here is this tree that's fallen into the river. If you were the river's flowing this way. If you were capsized and in the water, or if you were in your boat and you ended up in this area, it's very dangerous because the force of the current is able to flow through the tree. However, your boat and you will be forced into the tree, and possibly forced under the tree and between the tree and the bottom of the river. So it's very dangerous. We would always avoid hazards. So rocks just below the surface can present a hazard, hard to see for a beginner, and can cause you to capsize. Rocks in the main flow it can cause a less experienced person to try and avoid them too much, and then to get washed onto them and to capsize. So eddy lines, this is the boundary between fast and slow water, like between this white water and this water over here, or here. Over here too, there's slow water there, but faster water out here. So you can find it unstable on these eddy lines. Holes and stoppers, all this sort of thing, where water is flowing over and dropping over an obstruction and then circulating. Strainers like this tree, where the force of the current can go through this obstacle, but you or your boat can't. One of the biggest hazards if people are swimming is foot entrapment. And this is where, in a river like this, were you to be swimming because you've capsized, and you put your foot down when you're in fast flow, even if it's quite shallow, the forces are huge and it's very easy to underestimate the forces. This riverbed is full of boulders, and if your foot were to be trapped between two boulders, the force of the current then is acting on you, and you would be lying downstream with your foot held by these boulders. Your head would be underwater. It's a very dangerous situation. So the strongest advice is not to put your foot down until you're in totally calm water. So scouting from the bank. Obviously, you get out of the river above the rapid, you walk down. It's probably best to look at how the water is flowing out of the bottom of the rapid. Look at where you might want to go as you leave the rapid. If there's an eddy that's at the bottom of the rapid, that would be your target. And then work back up the river and through the rapid to see your route to get to that point. The other crucial point is how you're going to enter in the top of the rapid, because that will determine what your options are. As you look at the river from the bank, you're going to see lots of different features. As here, we can see that the current is flowing in this direction. There's an eddy over here, there's an eddy here, some sort of obstruction there. Again, looking at a wider scale, the water's coming down this way. There's eddies here, there, there's another one up there. There's some sort of ledge here. You will not be able to remember all these things. When you're in the boat, it's going to look totally different. So you have to do what you can do from the bank. Keep it fairly simple. So get out above the rapid. Now choose which bank to look from. Again, it may not be possible to look from both banks if there's cliffs or something, but try and judge the best way to see the river. Look at how the water is flowing out at the bottom. See where you want to leave the rapid, and then look for the recovery eddy at the bottom for safety, and then work your route back to the top from the bottom. Now, as I said, it will be hard to remember much of what you see from the bank, and it won't look the same as you're coming down in the boat. So what you can do is pick a reference point either on the bank or in the river itself at the entrance point. So that'll set you up for entering at the right point. You might want to take one reference point going down a rapid and possibly another reference point at the bottom maybe it's the eddy itself, or a rock that is where you want to be left or right of that particular rock or something. And so for most people, particularly beginners, they won't really be able to remember or recognize more than three references. And that's often all you need. So now starting from the boat, we're coming into the entrance point. Looking ahead, I can see where I want to go, and the orange markers show me where I want to kind of be within that channel. So now looking here, I can see more closely, and now I pick the exact place I want to go, which is avoiding that rock there, down the middle, and I'm now looking at an eddy where I want to turn into, and I turn into that eddy. From here, I can look down the river, up the river again, and I can see various routes. Now in this case, I'm going to gradually work my way across the other bank without losing ground, so I'm aiming over here. So I'm changing my angle to the current, and then I can see the features as I go across. And you can see some turbulence, and I'm in behind rocks, and I'm looking for an eddy over here, avoiding shallow rock and into the eddy behind this larger rock. And from here I can look across, there's waves. So I'm going to peel out and curve around here. I've noticed that there's a ledge there, there's a wave there, and so on. So I'm going to try and either use those or avoid those, depending what I'm doing. So again, I'm coming across, there's a wave going back upstream. I've stuck in behind it. I'm looking for this eddy over here. It's quite a small eddy. Oh, and now there's shallow rocks. So I hadn't realized that. So I'm leaning over the rocks, supporting myself. So it's a bit messy, but if you lean the right way, everything's okay. So I'm now pointing upstream again, and I'm looking to go out and curve downstream. So below the wave, now looking downstream, there's obviously a hazard here. One route there, I can go across there and go around, so I choose the easier one. And then there's a rock there, so I missed that. And then there's a pour over here. So I'm looking at it, there's a hole, and I can avoid it. I skirt around the side of it. And here is where I want to aim for. I have the possibility of going that side, but there's so in this case it was deep enough to do that. So again, looking downstream, turning into an eddy, gives me a chance to look. So I'm going to move across to where the other paddler is. Fast water into the slow water, and a bit of an eddy line, and there we go. So over to the other eddy. And again from the top. So let's just see if I've mentioned all the points. Work back from the exit to the entry. Well, you can't always see the exit from the boat. Pick a reference about halfway down. Again, you might have to pick references at shorter scale from the boat because you're lower, you can't see everything. Have a plan B. In other words, by going into these eddies, I give myself time to look around and to see various options, so I can multiple plans. Reverse very glide to see all the angles. Well, in this case, I'm seeing the angles from different eddies, and I'm forward fairy gliding to get from eddy to eddy. Note any hazards to avoid. So on this video, you're seeing a few holes. They're not massive. You could bounce those easy enough, but a beginner might want to avoid them. And note any recovery eddies at the bottom where if you have to swim, or if just in general you want to meet up again if you're paddling with a group. Okay, that's probably what we can say about that so far. So why would we need to learn how to read a river? Well, you'll be able to see in here that I'm able to see my route down through many rocks and obstacles, which I can see where the current is going, and shown here, the green. I can see where the hazards are and the rocks and so on. And there's one, and there are shallow rocks all around here, so you're just picking your route down. Now I'm guiding some other people down. There's more than one route, so they can pick their own if they want. There's a rock over here, some shallows here, so there's the shallow rocks, there's the bigger one. So my basic route is in green. But there are options. I can go over behind these rocks to an eddy. And there's again some shallowness there. So again, to me it's obvious the route is down this green way. And there you go, down the past rocks and all sorts of things, but we find a route that's fairly straightforward. Again, there are shallow rocks there. The other guy is a beginner, but he's taking a different route, and that's fair enough because there are many ways to go down. I'm just trying to indicate the easiest one here. And there you go, there's many ways to come down. So as a beginner, if you're being led, you won't need to read the river, but it's good habit to start to form. It's a hard skill to teach someone, so you really just need to observe it yourself. So if you continuously observe when you're paddling, you'll begin to see these things. Even following a good paddler, you can make your own choices and based on what you're seeing, and there isn't only one answer, except in a few strange circumstances. Good paddlers understand the river by reading it, so that's really why if you want to improve your paddling, get better at reading the river.